Not so long ago, I went to this presentation where a professor was talking about their research. Super interesting stuff. However, they put a slide up, which was a screenshot of a whole academic paper. So the title alone took about, what, like 15 seconds to read. Bear in mind that this professor was also talking whilst this thing was up there. Underneath the title, you had the abstract. Underneath the abstract, you had the beginning of the actual journal. And I'm there thinking, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to listen to you or do you want me to read? Because reading that slide alone would have taken a good 15 minutes. And I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. I want to listen to you, but I also can't read this and do this at the same time. So it's quite a frustrating experience from the audience's perspective. Now, my example was pretty extreme. I don't think I've ever seen so many words on one slide. I genuinely didn't know what was expected. However, we've all seen that probably in a work context somewhere where there are simply too many words for the time that we're given. But the sadder reality is we've all been that professor at one point in time where we have put way too many words on a slide and expected people to follow along. If you are losing your audience, it might simply be because you are putting way too much on your slide for them to read, and you are forcing them to make a decision between listening to you and reading your slide. In other words, you are making yourself useless to them. Don't do that. Now let's address the potentially faulty thinking behind putting something up for your audience to read and to keep talking whilst that slide is up. One might think, oh, well, one is using the visual system and the other is using the auditory system. But you know what? That is entirely false. Because when you read, you're not just using your eyes. It's not like you're looking at an image. You are looking at words that have meaning, that need to be strung together, that you need to understand in a cluster called a sentence. And that cluster called a sentence fits together in a paragraph, and that paragraph fills together with the larger meaning. All of that is quite cognitively taxing. Not only that, but reading uses your auditory system too. Yes, and you will have noticed this when you are silent reading. Have you ever noticed your inner voice that reads to you? Yeah, you can hear it, but only in your head. Not only that, but when you move to a really loud place and you're still trying to do your silent reading, at least what I do, is I start to hum the words so that I can hear myself read, even though it's silent. That tells you that you're listening to something, even though it's internal. And so what happens then is that when you're giving a presentation and you put up a slide, the auditory system of the audience is engaged in that reading, and you are also asking it to engage in listening to you. Impossible, okay? Too much to do at once. Let the auditory system either do the reading or their auditory system focus on you. It is very hard for the brain to then process those two things effectively, and so it makes a choice. And so what ends up happening is either they listen to you and they completely overlook your slides, in which case, why are they there? Or they choose to read your content, in which case you're just yapping and they ain't listening. And so you want to change that. Don't make yourself redundant. You're there for a reason. If you didn't need to be there, you would have just handed out your slides and not come at all. This is not a reading exercise. This is something where you are conveying information that they would not have got just by looking at some slides. So what do you want to do instead? If you're wanting them to focus on what you're saying, then number one, a picture can be worth 1,000 words. You can put a picture up there or an image or a diagram or something that doesn't compete with words. Or you can even just put a blank screen. Just press B and the screen will go black. That means you're not in competition. If you put an image up there, your auditory system isn't trying to compete with that. They're just using their visual system, and then you are speaking to something that is not competing with it. That's number one. Use an image if a text is not necessary. Number two, limit the number of words on the slide. When I say limit, I mean really limit. Ideally, I would say use one sentence or phrase per slide. 6 words. 6 words is great. They can have a glance at it and then also listen to you, and you're not taking away from your own authority. That said, if you do find that you do, for whatever reason, need to put on a longer piece of text, perhaps it's a quote, perhaps it's something that needs to be given in its entirety, then when you put it up, you actually read it at the same time so that you are doing the same thing as the audience. They're not having to either listen to you or to read. In fact, your reading is reinforcing their own reading. And that's helpful because they don't have to make the choice of attention. So number one, use an image or a blank screen where you can. Number two, reduce the number of words. Number three is, let's say you're making bullet points and you have 6 bullet points to make. If for whatever reason you want them to fit all on one screen, then make sure you animate. What I mean by that is cause your first point to come up first, and then when your second point comes up, gray out the first point so that what is salient is just the second point. And when the third point comes out, gray out the first two so that the third point is salient. And that way, your audience doesn't have to be looking at too many words at the same time, and you are preserving their attention on what counts and what you are saying. Okay? You don't want them to lag behind because they're still on point one when you're on point three, because point one is still up there on the screen. So make sure you take control of where the attention is being directed so that you don't lose them and you can deliver your message with impact. So to summarize, number one, use images or a blank screen. Number two, reduce the number of words. And if you do have to make it longer, read it out yourself. And if it sounds like you've been reading forever, then maybe you still need to shorten that text. And then thirdly is when you have done those things, make sure you animate so that it is point by point rather than a sea of text that your audience needs to look at. The point of this video is do not make yourself redundant by making the audience choose between looking at your slide and listening to you. Only reinforce your message by letting those two complement each other, what you're saying and what they're seeing. Let those two come together in harmony so that you just come out as a better communicator as a result. Now, if becoming a better communicator is something that you want to work on, then click the link below because there's something in there that would be of interest to you.